What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here. Britt Flynn, no power right now. Howard Bender, no power right now, but it's all right because you got your boy right here, one man powerhouse, running the show for the time being until we get the crew back on. Am I tempted to just talk about tight ends for the entire show? Yeah. Am I tempted to bring on producer Erndog and maybe we'll play a game of Uno or something while we wait? That's possible. Will there be awkward pauses if I'm here by myself doing the show by myself? Hopefully not too many. That's the first of maybe a couple. But we are going to truck on and talk about ball just like we always do on the Alarm Fantasy Hour here. Yeah, we got Dustin in the chat. We got Scamp in the chat. We got plenty of people hanging out. So it's not just going to be us. All right. So let's get into some of the news going on here. First thing I wanted to talk about with you guys, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs failing to sign their franchise tags, and also Tony Pollard, that people aren't really talking about the situation over there where it's just Pollard, nobody else. We're looking around at the rest of the league signing off on these. They're all sounding off with different information. Derrick Henry coming in, talking about how it's criminal. Christian McCaffrey supporting the boys. You've got, I mean, Austin Eckler obviously has his own gripes. So it's a complete mess over there. But my question to folks out there, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the chat, is how do you fix it? How do you fix it? I mean, some of the top comments I've seen, like Derek Brown, for instance, on Twitter, saying it's a mess. It needs to be fixed. No one knows how to fix it. I've been thinking about it, and there's really only two ways to do it. One is through the CBA, which I mean, they just signed one. There's 10 more years until that comes around again. So that's not going to happen. The other is for teams to kind of go against their own instincts as a GM, right? And sign these guys to long-term deals, big deals instead of these franchise tags. But they're not going to do that. I mean, look at the tight end position, look at the RB position. Both these positions have been artificially kept down by these franchise tags, right? The tight ends, every single guy that comes up that should get more than $10 million has gotten tagged, even if they're not getting used. Mike Gesicki got tagged to a $10 million deal last year, 10 million outright, and he played 35% of the snaps. Dalton Schultz, Evan Ingram, it doesn't matter. If you're even decent, David Njoku, if you're even decent, you're going to get tagged. And the running backs is going to continue to do the same thing. So what are we going to do about it? Scamp, I see you in the chat. Honestly, escalators for touches, kind of a decent idea. You know, in the future, maybe what they could do is, I mean, it would be kind of crazy to do escalations for contact, like the guys that are in the trenches, taking these hits, taking the physical punishment. That could make a lot of sense. I mean, you could, it's the way that you would keep the punters and kickers from getting paid big bucks while rewarding some of these running backs, rewarding some of these linebackers, some of these guys that are really putting their bodies on the line, the safeties, the cornerbacks, right? Guys putting their bodies on the line and having shorter careers. Maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe another way to do it is come up with some sort of pool system, right? Systems for where the running back room gets paid X amount of money as part of the salary cap. And if you want to have one guy like an Austin Eckler doing all the work, he gets a bigger share of the money. If you're going to split it amongst multiple guys, maybe that's the way you do it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the CBA, what they could do is actually look at the lengths of time these guys play for, right? And think about guys like Tom Brady and Philip Rivers and Drew Brees that play until they're 40 years old versus some of these running backs where we already know mathematically the age apex is what, 24 to 26 years old. So maybe there's some way to go in and handle it that. But until they sit down and actually talk to these guys, do the math on and talk to the rest of the league as well. Because if you're one of these quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins making money like crazy, even though you're not carrying a lot of stuff, like why not talk to those guys and say how do we fix it? How do we help? So I'm with you guys. Might have to be some sort of some situation for bonuses, some sort of sharing pool, or some sort of CBA for rookies for running backs who, typically have the lower career length, where in the early parts of their career, they just get paid more money. But there's got to be some solution to it. And that is the end of my rant on that before we bring Britt Flynn on. Britt, looks like the electricity is working fine over there. I just provided as much solo electricity as I could to this show while we were waiting.
Yeah, sounds like it. You were keeping the fires burning over here. It was great. What did I miss?
Just a rant on how to possibly make sure that running backs are compensated correctly. And Dustin makes a good point with snap count, but the problem with snap count that you run into is running backs are going to get smoked on that as well. Like that's the issue with the snap count front is that when you look at linemen, I mean linemen would love that because the vast majority of linemen that start all play over 1,000 snaps. Like all of them. You look at the linemen, they're playing 1,100 snaps. Same with quarterbacks. Honestly, quarterbacks play every snap unless they get hurt or someone else goes in to do a kneel down, or worst case scenario, someone goes out to throw a couple picks and prove that the starter's the starter, right? So that could be the case doing snap count, but again, running backs are going to get the short end of the stick on that as well because their effort, the effort of doing a carry up the gut on a power I or a a goal line stand, that's a lot more punishment than you take for a snap when you go out as a punter or a gunner or even, honestly, at times, maybe like a center. So, I don't know if that's the solution.
Yeah, I don't know if we really have a good solution. And even if we do, it's going to be 2030 by the time that the next collective bargaining agreement comes up for arbitration. And by that point, it may be too late. So, not sure if there is a good solution. And I think that every running back out there does have a legitimate gripe. But now that I'm here, settled in, let's get to some more news because the 9 teams have their rookies reporting to training camp today. And I'm super excited. That means football's almost here. We finally get to see some of these guys in action that we've been hyping up. Um, what are you expecting to see? And is there a narrative that you think will push people off of a certain player like we saw with Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, I mean, we see it every single year where, something comes out and tells us, "Okay, this guy's not catching on." The problem that we run into is that we're so quick to over adjust for seeing this in the past and saying, okay, Justin Jefferson's just going to be a slot guy, but then he panned out. Jamar Chase is just going to be, he can't see the stripes on the football because there's no the college ball stripes. He can't catch. Like the thing about it is that sometimes we do get this news and it turns out to be true and we just ignore that. Like, so it's not really a case of like, okay, whoever there's bad smoke about, move them up because there are plenty of times where it's the other way and they actually turns out to be right. Like when Tavon Austin was a first round pick and they were saying this guy doesn't know what he's doing. It turned out that he didn't know what he was doing. And at the end of his rookie year, he came out and said, that he goes, the playbook looks like Spanish to me, right? So sometimes if they come out and say these guys don't look good, they don't look good. I mean, look at Hakeem Butler. They were saying that he's not doing anything. Keishon Butte for the Patriots so far, they said that he might not even make the team. So sometimes when there's talk like that, not to mention every once in a while there's a ton of smoke behind a guy and then he ends up being nothing, like Chris Warren for the Raiders. Remember that offseason where people were moving him up to RB like 2, Darwin Thompson for the Chiefs. So I wouldn't get too lost in the smoke either way. That's my advice.
I think that's great advice to take because we've seen coach speak never stops. It's like a little wind up puppet that you just pull the string and it keeps on happening. And
Right.
you're not going to get sage advice from a wind up puppet. You're going to get pre recorded phrases. And that's kind of how it is. What we need to pay attention to in training camp is what we see with our own 2 eyes and what just evaluate it based on that. But I know me personally got burned by Jalen Tolbert last year because before training camp started, we were all like, yeah, he's going to be great. And then he never even played a snap or whatever it was. But
He got hurt. He got hurt a little bit though. He got hurt, right? Like, and I guess he did end up on the way on the back burner now that they brought in Brandon Cooks. But some of these guys, you just get banged up. It happens.
yeah, yeah, it does happen. But speaking about guys getting banged up, it's actually come out that the Raiders traded Darren Waller due to their frustration with him missing significant time over the past 2 seasons. I know that you're really high on him in this Giants offense. Does that make you worry about his future in New York?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that once again, Travis Kelsey has set an impossible standard, not just in his ability, but in his ability to stay healthy. Like the, Travis Kelsey, and knock on wood, like he doesn't miss time, and he definitely doesn't miss significant time. Whereas these other guys, like you can say Darren Waller is injury prone, and he is, but virtually every tight end is. Evan Ingram's had his problems. George Kittle has missed time in 4 straight years. Dallas Goedert also missed time in 4 straight years. Right, Mark Andrews has missed time last year. He missed multiple games the year before that with COVID. We know that he's a diabetic, so there could be long. I mean, honestly, I know it sucks to say, but there could be long term issues there. Jay Cutler had issues with diabetes and playing with that. Guys have had issues with sickle cell playing in high altitudes, and now with the games in Denver and the games in Mexico, you have to factor those things in, right? Like guys like Ryan Clark could never play for the Broncos when he was a player. Like he was just off their list. So you have to factor stuff like that in. But in this instance, I think they might have just been a little short sighted with a guy like Darren Waller if they're trying to win now, because I don't really care about the long term possibility. And anyone can stay healthy for one season. If he passed the physical, then I'm in. I've seen plenty of guys about to go to a new team not pass that physical, and then we say, hold up, right? But if he's passing the physicals, then what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to circumvent that and somehow say that I know something about his body or his medicals that the team doesn't? I just can't possibly do that. So no, I'm not concerned about Darren Waller. He's one of my favorite draft picks at ADP because he's one of the few tight ends that could lead his team in targets, and he has a capable coach and a capable quarterback.
Yeah, it seems like almost after they gave him that huge contract that they just wanted to backpedal a little bit, and it wasn't all about his health. They just wanted to make it about his health and not be like, well, we spent this much money on this guy and we handed out a bad contract, so we're not taking any of the heat. It's on you, Darren Waller. That's kind of what it seems like to me. And I totally agree with you. I think that he can lead that team in targets. Um, Maybe some targets that aren't always accurate. Dak Prescott has vowed that he won't repeat his record breaking interceptions again this season. Is this just something to placate the fan base and his coaches? Or do you think that he can rebound from a bad season?
So I mentioned this on the morning show, and my first thoughts when I read the full comments, my first thoughts hearing this was that's reasonable. And then when I read the full comments, I thought you probably shouldn't have said that, right? Like to suggest that it was luck or happenstance that balls were dropped or, that they were tipped or whatever. That is such a cop out. And you do not want your number one leader in general making excuses. You want him taking the blame, right? If a ball hits somebody's hands and comes out, find a way to put it in a different spot. Find a way to throw it to somebody else, right? Like know what's going on. If you have guys that are routinely dropping passes, maybe you should be throwing them to somebody else. Then they won't get intercepted. So take a little bit of that blame on yourself. The other part of this quote that scares me is that it ties right into what Mike McCarthy's been saying about how they want to throw it less. They want to run the football. They don't want to take as many risks. They want to rest the defense. Dak Prescott says he's going to take better care of the football. He's not going to take as many chances. This is fantasy football, baby. I want them taking as many chances as they want. If you if you drive the ball 60 yards downfield and throw a pick six, guess what? You get the ball right back and you can load up more points, right? Like I do not care about risk taking. I want as much risk taking as possible. I want Jameis Winston. That's what I want. So I want the Dak Prescott of old. I want the Dak Prescott that doesn't care. Huck it, chuck it football. Throwing down to Brandon Cooks. So I don't want them coming out and saying we're going to be a less productive offense on purpose. That sounds terrible to me personally. I work for Fantasy Alarm. Like I
And
don't
as
care.
a
I
as a
don't care if the
Cowboys
Cowboys win.
fan,
Yeah.
no, as a Cowboys fan, I'm like, wait, what? You're scoring too fast? What do you mean you're scoring too fast? If you're putting up points, then that's points. So
The
yeah, that
Chargers,
does
the
concern
Chargers
me a
looked at
little
that,
bit.
Britt. The Chargers looked at that and said, that sounds great. We'll take Kellen Moore, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they got burned in the playoffs last year because they were trying to milk the clock and just keep, the Jaguars out of it. And then the Jags came back and they ultimately lost that game. So I'm just, I don't know. It worries me. Mike McCarthy in general worries me, but we'll get to that later.
Well,
Um,
I'll tell you one thing on that from a Cowboys fan perspective, for your standpoint, is I've actually seen this twice. The coach saying this and the quarterback saying this, and it actually worked out for the team on 2 occasions. One, Patrick Mahomes, the year he threw 50 touchdown passes, they won 12 games. They went to the playoffs. The very next year, they came back with a better running game and a better defense, and they won 14 games. and Patrick Mahomes only threw like 30 touchdown passes, right? Only 30, which is he's awesome. But and I actually saw it years ago when I was first getting started playing fantasy and into this game with the Colts, where Peyton Manning comes out. The Colts win 12 games. He throws 48 touchdown passes. Very next year, what happens? Better defense, better running game. They win 14 games. He throws 28 or whatever it is. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But
But go ahead.
I was just gonna say that maybe for the team, and you can interrupt me whenever you want, because if you never interrupt me, then I'll never stop talking. But the that's the thing, is that the Cowboys could be a better team, and Dak Prescott could be better at taking care of the football and have a better QB to interception ratio, and they could win more games, and still it would be bad for fantasy football. So I don't want that. I want the Jaguars with Blake Bortles. Good offense, terrible defense. That's how you get Allen Robinson 1,400 yards, maybe. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, and I'm a little worried about that better run game that you speak of too, because we brought it up on Lightning Round just, what was it, 15 minutes ago? That I don't know if Tony Pollard can handle all that volume. So maybe Dak takes off and they do more designed runs for him like they did in his rookie season. We'll have to wait and see on that. But somebody who I definitely know is not taking designed runs is Baker Mayfield. And reports from Tampa Bay are seemingly suggesting that he has already won the starting job and that there really is no competition at all. Does that worry you about the Bucks position players if there was no competition for a quarterback with one of the lowest QBRs in the league last year?
Well, it definitely worries you about Kyle Trask, right? So this is the last gasp for Kyle Trask. Not to Dr. Seuss it too hard there, but if Kyle Trask doesn't win this job over Baker Mayfield after he's been with the team for multiple years now and Baker hasn't, then we can forget about Kyle Trask. And the thing about Kyle Trask is that when you look at his profile, he kind of seems like he might be a mobile quarterback, but he really is not. He's more of like a Big Ben type guy. So he wasn't going to be a high upside play anyway. So I don't mind the better quarterback winning the job out. And Baker Mayfield, he's had flashes, and we've never seen him with these weapons. Like, say what you will, he's had solid weapons. We've never seen him play with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So, and I kind of like Kate Otten too, honestly. Not for redraft this year with those two weapons there, but for Dynasty, I got some Kate Otten out there. I got some stashes. He won out the job as the starting tight end as a rookie. There's something to be said for that. So, I actually am not, as much as John and Pemba will probably kill me if he hears me saying something positive about Baker Mayfield. I think that maybe the other weapons here might be enough to help him out a little bit, and he'll be serviceable. Not that I'm going to draft him in any single QB leagues or probably even any two QB leagues, but I don't think it's crazy for Mike Evans to scratch and claw his way to 1,000 yards the way he's done 9 years in a row now, right? And Chris Godwin runs the kind of routes that Baker's okay with. So I don't think it's that crazy.
But Kyle Trask also had Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney. I mean, he had weapons and put up 4,000 yards. So it's a little crazy to me that after 2 years, entering his third year in this system, that he isn't even in consideration for the job. That's what worries me a lot.
We were all rooting for Kyle Trask because
we're all rooting for you.
You were the chosen one, right? Like, he was the mystery box is what you want, because when the mystery box wins, you can say, okay, he's at least as good as Baker Mayfield, but what if he's that much better, right? Because that's nice, right? To say that he just flat out beat out Baker Mayfield, you say, okay, well, maybe his floor is Baker Mayfield. It's not that high of a floor, but what about the upside? With Baker Mayfield, his floor and ceiling is Baker Mayfield, which kind of sucks, right? So yeah, it would have been nice if Baker did win that. I mean, if Trask won instead of Baker.
Yeah, well, training camp hasn't started yet, so maybe this is just more coach speak and popcorn headlines, but we've got a lot more to talk about today other than that, because, we want to talk about real fantasy stuff. We want to give you some stuff out of the draft guide that you can get over at fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. You can also get a 7-day free trial for our All Pro subscription and 50% off your first 6 months with promo code Howard. And that gives you access to everything on the site. So if you want to listen to us talk about more than just Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield, there's your sign to do that.
Yeah, and Howard's not here today, so use promo code Coop. It's shorter, fewer letters. Sorry, Howard. When you come back on the show tomorrow, they'll use promo code Howard. But today we're using promo code Coop, baby, COOP. And with the 7-day free trial, like, those go hand in hand. Like, you sign up for your 7-day membership, and you could put the code in there so that if you decide to keep it, you get the code, but you get the code and you get the discounts. You get that all at once, and you get the 7 days to decide if you want to keep it or not. So make sure you're using the code if you're checking out the 7 day trial so that you have that no matter what, right? And I'm sure you'll love it. Come hang out with us in the Discord. With the trial, you get access to everything. Bet some baseball. It's let's see, less than 7 days till the NASCAR race. So you get all our DFS PGA stuff. You get the NASCAR stuff. So you can actually make enough money to pay for that membership in the 7 days that you have. And if you don't hit, then you know what? Wait until next year and try another 7 day trial.
Yep. And speaking of PGA, Junkies is previewing the Open Championship for golf betting and DFS at 7 p.m. Eastern on Better Sports Network tonight as well. So I know that's a big deal, and we want you guys all to tune into that. But let's move on to some stuff in the draft guide. Let's talk football. We've had so many running back holdouts, and it seems like that's all everybody's been talking about for days and days and days. And you put out an article today, Coop, about Dalvin Cook and his odds, because there are still so many free agents out there in the running back pool. So give us a little preview of what you put in your article.
Yeah. So here's the situation with Dalvin. I wanted to write something because once Hopkins came off the board, like this is how it happens in March too. There's a pecking order to these guys. Unless a team goes out of their way to sign a specific guy that fills a specific role, which can happen if somebody needs a field stretcher or they need like a specific nose guard or something. You wait for the top guy to get signed, and then the other contracts are based off that. Right now, the prize pick was DeAndre Hopkins. He needed to get signed. Once he did, the odds changed across the board. And the Patriots actually leapfrogged the Miami Dolphins, which we'll get to that shortly. Britt, I believe you have those odds in front of you. But you think about what's going on with the running back position. If the top dog was Leonard Fournette or the top dog was Zeke Elliott, they would have been signed already. As soon as Dalvin Cook was made available, which now that we know he was cut and we know that they were trying to trade him, every team knew he was going to be available. That's what's holding things up. He is the shoe that needs to drop. He is the top free agent running back, which if you have him in Dynasty, that at least makes you feel pretty good for the time being, depending where he goes. But Dalvin needs to sign first, and that's going to trickle down to everybody else. And Joe Mixon isn't really helping anybody out by taking a discount. Like all these other RBs come out saying, I mentioned at the top of the show, Derrick Henry, all these guys come out saying like, I stand with the free agents and I stand with the holdout guys. And Joe Mixon's like, yeah, pay me whatever, right?
So I'm a company man. It's fine.
Yeah, Joe crossed the picket line pretty quickly there. But yeah, so Britt, you have the odds there for where they've changed, at least for the top few guys.
I do. So actually, the New England Patriots have emerged as the new favorites, which I know that kills you in your soul for your Ramondre Stevenson shares, but they are currently at plus 150 odds. The Miami Dolphins are next at plus 200. And then you've still got the Jets hanging in the mix at plus 400. All AFC East teams trying to make a play for Dalvin Cook. So if he goes to the Patriots, what is the impact on Ramondre Stevenson? Do you think that they can both have a role in fantasy, or do you think one cancels out the other?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Patriots fan at my heart, but I'm a fantasy football analyst for a living. This is what I do for work. So I have to be realistic about the situation that only Patriots fans will be happy about this. And pretty much only the Patriots fans that don't play fantasy or have Ramondre Stevenson in fantasy, which I'm sure there's plenty of homers that will be a little mixed on it, right? But I mean, if you think about some of these Patriots teams in the past where they had a bruiser back like Corey Dillon and Kevin Falk is the gold standard that they've been kind of replicating for a long time. With guys like Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis combined with Kevin Falk or James White or Danny Woodhead or whoever, like LeGarrette Blount and James White, another one where both those guys were fantasy relevant at the same time. Ramondre Stevenson and Dalvin Cook would be the new best pairing of that case. And Dalvin Cook as the James White role could be viable in any given week, right? So it's interesting for redraft. Both those guys are still viable, but for dynasty, you got to hate it, right? You have to hate what happens with Ramondre Stevenson, who just had like 70 targets last year. You have to hate that Dalvin Cook is probably not the guy you call up to the goal line. Right? Like you look at those two guys standing side by side and you're the running backs coach, who are you going to point at? You're not pointing at Dalvin Cook, right? You're not pointing at Pierre Strong. You're sending Ramondre down to smash that in. So, it would be great for real life football and not so great for fantasy football, right, Britt?
Yeah, it could be very vulture-ish and just very difficult to decide on a week-to-week basis who to start in your lineup. It could be like the DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams situation that we saw in Detroit last year. We never really knew which guy was going to get the touchdown, at least early on in the season. We figured it out by the end that it was going to be Jamal Williams, but in the beginning, it was a little bit of a mystery. So say that he doesn't go to the Patriots. Who are the biggest winners outside of Stevenson?
Yeah, man. I mean, I talked about this briefly last show, but let's just think about it logically. This team is so interested in Dalvin Cook to play that particular role that they're currently named as the favorites. That means that they're probably thinking pretty hard about it. Now, I mean, maybe that means that they're thinking hard enough about it that they want Kareem Hunt if they don't get Dalvin Cook. But if they don't bring anybody in, we have to be thinking about who's going to get that passing catching role. Again, I mentioned it last show, but Ty Montgomery would be the boring option, but he was the guy who had it last year for one game before he got hurt. But I mean, Pierre Strong Jr. That's a Twitter favorite. That's a metrics favorite. He ran a 4.37. That's 99th percentile for the position. Like, obviously, that's the most fun pick. So if that happens, we sit back and root for Pierre Strong. We draft Pierre Strong, but you have Ty Montgomery on that on your watch list in case he comes out and catches 6 passes week 1, which is what James White used to do. Like the last before James White got hurt his hip and his career is pretty much over. He came out and had six receptions in each of the first 2 games. So if that's the job, then that's the job. And Dustin, I see you in the chat. Guys, don't tell Howard that I've said, Ty Montgomery's name enough. That's another $50 in the jar. But
he stole my transition.
He's out there.
Stole my transition in the chat.
Justin's paying attention.
Oh man, we're gonna have to get a calculator with all these fines. But let's move away from the Patriots. We've talked enough about those guys. Yes. Let's talk about the Dolphins. So their backfield was very mixed, pretty balanced last season. If Dalvin Cook goes to the Dolphins, is he outright the top dog?
So I love the idea. I love the idea of him being the top dog with Alec Ingold and running behind Teron Armstead, but you have kind of scared me a bit on that. So I want to hear, you've said that you don't believe in the past. I distinctly remember you saying that you were like, it's just another brick in this muddy wall. So why don't you please tell me again so I could be scared again. But I love the hypothetical upside of it. So I want to hear the downside, Britt.
The hypothetical upside definitely exists, but I just think in this Shanahan coaching tree, that it's going to be a lot more split than we think, that we aren't going to see just one real bell cow back. And we kind of saw it last season in that limited game sample with Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey. Elijah Mitchell got a ton more carries than Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey just got more targets. And if that same coaching tree kind of bleeds into Mike McDaniel's offense over here in Miami, I'm just a little bit worried that the snap share could be a little bit lower for Cook.
Yeah, but we're so worried about Christian McCaffrey that the range of where we would rank him is somewhere between 1 and 2, right? Would you even move him? Do you even consider moving him to 3, Britt?
I mean, yeah, I think that I could move him to 3.
So somewhere between 1 and 3.
If Mitchell is healthy, but
because we love Trent Williams and we love Kyle Juszczyk and we love the scheme, right? Well, and we love Christian McCaffrey. Well, Dalvin Cook is not somebody we necessarily love, but we certainly like him. And we love Teron Armstead and we love Alec Ingold. That's why, to me, I look at it and say, damn, even if they split it up a little bit, if he's the top dog getting the most high leverage situations in terms of receptions and goal line, I don't care if they mix in Raheem Mostert till he gets hurt. And then, Devon A-Chain, or is it Devon A-Chain? That's what I was being told in the chat earlier. No, it's Devon. Yeah, Devon A-Chain. Like, if they mix those guys in, fine. But to me, Dalvin Cook, if they're going to pay the price that it's going to take to get him, then we have to respect that he's going to be a major piece of the offense. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. And both things could happen. We're not going to know until he signs somewhere. So what about the Jets? I know that the Jets are still hanging around. Is this a bad sign for the health of Breece Hall, or do you think that they just want to ease him back in there by going after Dalvin Cook?
Oh, yeah. If they sign Dalvin Cook, that's a horrible sign for Breece Hall. It truly is. We probably don't move him too far down in Dynasty, but short-term value matters, right? If you had Breece Hall, you're counting on him to start. If you drafted Breece Hall in early drafts, Scott Fishbowl, where you had to draft him, you're counting on him to be in your starting lineup, right? Because he's going round 2 or 3, usually round 3, sometimes even round 4. But I mean, if you're drafting a player in round 4, if you're drafting a player in round 7, you're expecting that guy to be in your lineup every week, right? So like Brees Hall, where he's going, it would be a nightmare for Dalvin Cook to sign with that team right now because everyone that's taken him up to this moment has said to themselves, I am starting Brees Hall. So that is a very scary proposition. And if they do that, I don't see why Brees Hall wouldn't be a guy that we start treating like Kyler Murray or Zach Ertz or Javonte Williams, where we say, okay,
Mhm.
now they've made other plans. They've actually made grander plans. I mean, it would be very scary. And it would obviously vaporize the rest of those guys over there with the little hope that was left for Michael Carter. Michael Carter would be getting beat up worse than DeAndre Swift this offseason or, in the last couple of years if they go Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook. But people also like Bam Knight. They like Izzy Abanikanda. Like all those guys would be pretty much smoked. So and also I'm a Patriots fan. I don't want him to go to the Jets.
Well, the crazy thing is that Michael Carter was, ahead of Javonte Williams when they both played together in North Carolina. And now he's just, like you said, kind of been vaporized. Even if, they don't sign Dalvin Cook, it's kind of interesting how that backfield is shaking out. There are a couple more teams that are long shots. I mean, big odds. Commanders, Cowboys, Broncos, Giants, Bills, and Raiders, all at plus 1,500. And then the Bears are in there at plus 2,000. What's your favorite long shot team? And do you think any of these teams actually have a legitimate chance at getting Cook?
Yeah, I like to think about it in terms of like what's a realistic narrative and what is a less realistic narrative and what's pushing these teams up the board, right? So like with the Cowboys, Giants, and Raiders, it's obvious that the potential holdouts are what's pushing things up. But I personally don't feel that's too realistic. Like if the stories are true, like for instance, the Giants at plus 1,800 on there. If the stories are true that the Giants wanted to pay him 13 million and Saquon wanted 15 million, and that was the difference maker. Do you really think that team would turn around and be willing to pay Saquon 10 million and then also pay Dalvin whatever he wants? Right? Like that, it just seems like a ridiculous use of resources to turn around and also sign this other player and basically slap Saquon in the face or slap Josh Jacobs or Tony Pollard in the face that way. So those teams I rule out. The ones that are realistic to me are the Broncos, right? Because Javonte Williams is hurt. And it's the same reason we say that he might go to the Jets. And that if he went there, everyone would turn around and say that makes sense, right? And then the other one would be honestly the Commanders, where I'm probably not going to sprinkle any money on them, but just the fact that they're being considered there uh, when all the other teams have a definitive narrative there, and we do have a coach, Ron Rivera, that used to coach Christian McCaffrey and knows how to use these 2 week guys. They have Eric Bieniemy now, like, and they clearly don't like Antonio Gibson. I'm not sure what Antonio Gibson did along the way, but he's been in the doghouse like crazy. And Brian Robinson, as good as he ran the ball, he was kind of useless in the pass game. So I don't think it's crazy for him to go to the Commanders either. But the Broncos is where I'd put my money if I was going to bet plus 1,500 because if we're talking about Brees Hall and Javonte Williams, Javonte's hurt worse than Brees. So why am I going to bet, plus 400 on the Jets if I get plus 1,500 on the Broncos?
Yep,
What do
that's
you think,
very
Britt?
true. And the thing is, too, with the Giants, with the Raiders, Dalvin Cook's apparently already turned down a contract because he didn't like the money that they were offering him.
Ooh,
So why would he go to these teams where they're not paying these franchise backs more? You know what I mean? I highly doubt that he's going to get that kind of contract that he wants
I'm
to go
surprised
with that.
that. Sorry to jump in. I'm surprised the Chargers aren't on there. You think they're not? I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised. Like the Chargers feel like a team that has a very thin depth chart. I'm surprised they're not even like within the plus 2,000, $100 to win. Anytime I see a bet that's over $100 to win $2,000, it's like it's not really a true consideration, right?
Yeah, I think it probably comes down to money, and the fact that they already have Austin Eckler, and they're not looking for necessarily a dual threat back. I think that they're just looking for more of like a bruiser. And although Dalvin Cook could be a bruiser, he has much more to offer. Hence, you would have to pay him a lot more, which is
Yeah.
why I don't think that they're necessarily looking at him. Um, But talking about holdouts, so we mentioned it a little bit with these long shot guys, but with Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs failing to sign their franchise tags, there is a real possibility that they miss time, at least for the first few games. So I want to know kind of what that will look like for these teams and if we can count on their backups. So we've got the Las Vegas Raiders with Zamir White. He had 17 whole rush attempts in 14 games last season, averaging 4.1 yards a carry. His college stats were pretty good. In 2021, he only had 856 yards, but a 5.4 yards per carry average. The dogs like
I
him.
love Samir
Um,
White,
that
dude. I like
that
that.
might be why the power went off and the sirens are going off. But he doesn't really profile as a receiving back with only 9 catches. So, do you think he can be the lead back in Josh Jacobs' absence?
Yeah, I think that's the plan. I think that's why they drafted him in the third round. And the fact, like, if it wasn't for Josh Jacobs showing out the way he did, then he probably would have been the guy this year. And that just speaks to what I was talking about at the very top of the show while your electricity was out, is that as long as the franchise tag is available as a vehicle and the NFLPA and the teams have agreed to the CBA that says this is a move that's allowed, teams are going to take advantage of that anytime it presents value. And at positions like running back and tight end right now, it presents value virtually every time you have an above average player because the average of the top 5 contracts is nothing. Somebody even pointed out that at most positions, I think it was Jeff Darlington pointed out on Twitter that if that's not the right person, I apologize, but I think it was Jeff Darlington pointed out that 5 years ago the contracts for the quarterback, tight end, and wide receiver, all the franchise tag contracts, those are all up by a minimum 10%, and the running back one is actually lower than it was then. 5 years ago it was 10.6 million. Now it's 10.1 just because the contracts have gotten worse. So there's really, I mean, like how it's hard. We want to blame them because we're rational people, but if these are the rules of the game, then you use the rules of the game. And this is the NFL where you got to be ruthless in cutting guys. I mean, if you really think about it, taking a knee is ruthless, right? Like because you're allowed to take a knee and end the game when there's a minute left or 2 minutes left, you do it. So if you can pay this guy $5 million and he's worth, you do it. So that's the only thing holding back Samir White. But if he holds out, I'm in.
Yeah, I think the only thing that concerns me is just the state of this Raiders offense as a whole. Um, Worries me a little bit about Jimmy G and about Devontae Adams in the front office and coaching and all that. But I mean, if Samir White is going to profile as the every down running back, I mean, sign me up. If he gets 300 carries like Josh Jacobs did, he's he's basically free in all your drafts. So with the Giants, you've got a little bit more of a fluid situation because you've got Matt Breida, but then you have rookie Eric Gray. Matt Breida did show some spark in San Francisco, but it's been in 2018 and 2019 since the last time he really did anything. But Eric Gray's interesting to me because he had a 6.4 yard per carry average on Oklahoma last season, and he finished with over 1,600 scrimmage yards. So I think that he's the guy I'm looking at to take over in the event Barkley holds out. Do you have any strong feelings one way or the other on either of these two guys?
I mean, to be honest, last year Matt Breida looked good. When anytime Barkley came out, Matt Breida, I remember distinctly one game, there was a drive where Barkley got like a pinched nerve in his shoulder, and Matt Breida went out there and pounded the rock, and they went from the 25-yard line. I think they only passed one time, and Breida punched it in. And he's faster than people think. Runs like a 4.44, so he's like 90% out of speed. I know that like we always want to gravitate towards the shiny rookie. And obviously, just like we're talking about with Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield, the upside for Eric Gray is higher. Just the unknown is higher. But I think they re-signed Matt Breida for a reason. And I honestly, if Saquon Barkley holds out and I got to put Fab down, I know people are gonna be going for Eric Gray. I'm going to be going for Matt Breida. I think I'd get him. I think I could honestly get him cheaper than what it costs to get Eric Gray. And you're getting at the very least, you're getting a coin flip on who the guy is going to be. But I will admit that I mean, all I have to say is rookies shiny.
Rookies shiny.
Yeah.
It's true though, and I think that you make a very good point about the older, more established running back because not only does Breida know the system, but we've seen rookies struggle in pass blocking. And that's one thing that you've got to be able to do if you're going to be on the field and take snaps. So it could be very interesting.
Can I make
But
one point on pass blocking that I've had this discussion on Twitter, and you can't have it in the number of words you're allowed on Twitter, right? So people say to me, they say, "Oh, this guy was a good pass blocker in college, and he graded out well in college, and he played all the pass snaps in college." Well, some of these college offenses not only aren't the same as the ones in the NFL, but they're a very dumbed down version of it. Like sometimes the pass blocking schemes in some offenses work the way that you think they would, where the back is back there and their responsibility is whoever's far lined up to the farthest to the right or whoever blitzes. Like sometimes that is the scheme, man, one man on man. But some of these slide protections and stuff, you're doing math in your head. I've seen videos of uh, Marshawn Lynch counting and pointing and picking up crazy and the guys in the line changing where they were lined up right before the snap, and Marshawn still picking it up because no matter what he sounds like or his interviews and stuff, that guy is very smart and he's very football savvy for sure. A guy like Anthony Sherman that played fullback for the Chiefs for a long time, very smart and very good at that. Kyle Juszczyk as well. So it's not just a matter of his grades in college were good, so now he's good at it. It's a matter of learning the new scheme. And some of this stuff is crazy, crazy complicated. Watch the quarterback thing on Netflix and watch Kirk Cousins talking about the play calls. It is complicated stuff.
yep, or Cooper Cup after any single game, getting interviewed on the sideline. It's if you don't know football like in depth, it's almost like he's speaking another language.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But do you think I want to talk a little bit before we move on to the newest draft guide article about the implication on sports betting and fantasy, because I think that these holdouts are really bad for these industries. So, for example, it's pretty much skewing the sports books already. The Giants win total is 7.5, and the odds have already gone to negative 120 for the under. So they're already taking a giant, giant dive with the potential holdout of Saquon Barkley. And as far as Barkley's season long totals, they were pulled as soon as there were whispers of a holdout. So is there anything that you think specifically is bad for sports betting and for fantasy players, just aside from them holding out and putting a worse product on TV?
Well, to be honest, for the time being, there's been no this isn't entirely different from what we've seen in the past. It's not drastically different to have guys hold out and to have indecision at this point and guys still looking for contracts. What's drastically different is that we're doing all this stuff so much earlier, right? The invention of underdog fantasy, and if you're not set up over there, use promo code Fantasy Alarm. They'll match up to $100. But the invention of these things, I'm drafting teams in August. I'm drafting teams in March. I'm betting on sports in July. This is the new phenomenon. Guys holding out and taking a while is not a new phenomenon. So personally speaking, when I look around at it, it's not the gambling or fantasy industry at all. I guess maybe if they're we're pushing it to a certain degree, but I love playing fantasy early. I love betting early, and I don't think that's going to change. So maybe the NFL needs to set some better deadlines and push these guys a little bit to even out those sports books a little earlier. That's my opinion on that.
I can definitely see that. But we've got a guest. So, yeah, if
Let's
he's
get him
ready.
on to a surprise guest.
Yeah,
Look
we
at
have a
that.
surprise
What's going on,
guest.
everybody? How Britt, Coop? How are we doing? How are we doing?
What's
How's
up,
it
dude?
going?
That's the boss man there, the editor for Fantasy Alarm, the guy that makes the trains run on time, and QB Whisperer. He's got a lot of names, but you popping in to talk a little running backs with us, John?
Yeah, listen, I heard you just talking about Saquon, talking about the Giants here. I just finished the 2023 FSGA Best Ball Experts Draft here. Picked from the 9 spot. It's a 14-team league, and I wasn't afraid of the holdout. I took Saquon at 9 there to get him in there again. It's best ball format, so obviously you got to take a little bit of risk here, but I just don't see him missing paychecks. So he can kind of hold out. He can whine and complain and put a front up, but, history has sort of shown that this doesn't work out for running backs all too often. So, I would expect him to eventually suit up and be ready to go to start the season, because the only way he's going to get paid is to put forth another full healthy season of production and show that he's worth whatever money that they're going to give him.
Well, let me ask you, John, who happened to win that FSGA Experts Best Ball Championship draft last year?
Oh, I did.
You did. So you know a little bit about this kind of stuff, do you?
I do. Yeah. I'll say this: last year's team was an absolute unit. Took Austin Eckler in the first round, took Devontae Adams in the second round, drafted Jalen Hurts, drafted Justin Fields in that league as well. So I was a very tough out and really ran away with it there at the end, when every other week you're having to deal with Fields or Hurts dropping 40 fantasy points, Devontae Adams going off for 40, Eckler. So this draft is a little bit more tough. I hate drafting from the middle of drafts. I'd much rather draft at the end. And Coop, I like drafting at the back end of drafts. I don't always care too much. I'll draft at the first. I'll take the best player. That's fine. But I like the wheel if I can pick it. I do that in the Scott Fish Bowl as well. But picking right in the middle of a 14-team league it's a tough sled.
Yeah. So with the best ball ones with the FSGA, for those that don't know, these are all like expert leagues for FSGA folks. And does that have like the tiers where you get sent up and down? Because
not this one. The best ball one is only a Champions League.
Okay.
But they do obviously have the other the redraft format, which is the relegation leagues from champions to non-champions. So I got the gold ring for winning last year, which Howard Bender's still holding hostage. He's seen you, Coop, like 3 times. He also went to my wedding, and yet hasn't been able to somehow get the ring into the state of Massachusetts yet. So he's still holding on to that. And apparently my name was put on a plaque on a trophy as well, according to our guy Digger there. So who runs the drafts on FSGA and RT Sports. So I'll say the one difference, we mentioned, we do a lot of drafting on Underdog. We also do a lot of work with RT Sports. It's getting used to the ADPs. We did the staff mock draft over on RT Sports, and guys that you're expecting to be at certain places weren't there, and you can kind of dig and get a little gems. But when you're drafting with some sharps, they are also very aware of the ADP. So guys that you like, I can wait a round or two, and I'll get Keenan Allen here because of where he's going. Now they knew where he was. They found him on the draft list and wasn't able to sneak him by like I was kind of hoping for. But if you're looking right now, you want to go, partake over in RT Sports. Again, we got the deal going on right now. rtsports.com/alarm. Pro code alarm23 will get you a 100% deposit match up to $200. They have all these fantastic best ball contests over there. And you study the ADP. Sometimes people just draft off the list, and that can be used to your advantage there as well to find some late values or draft players where you're not used to seeing them. So.
Yeah, I'm in the for the first time I'm in on the FSG. I'm in the redraft, so I have to start in the lower league. Last year, Howard Bender won one of these. He's jumping up to the Champions League this year. So I got one coming up right at 3:00. I think they're going to be talking about it on Sirius XM a bit.
I popped on with Kendall and Dwayne from
cool.
Fantasy Life to talk about my roster there. So good. I'll be paying attention. What's Superflex, regular? What's your format?
It's just a regular, pretty standard league PPR. The guys in my league, there's some names in here for sure. Heath Cummings from CBS, Tom Kastanich, Mike Barner for RotoWire, Dan Titus over at Yahoo, are obviously Jim Bowden representing the Athletic and Fantasy Alarm. So there's some sharks in there. Nice. I didn't realize until today that Jim was in here. I'm like, nice.
Well, you gotta get on the XM show later on. I think I might be popping on with Fensty and Jim to talk about the best ball draft. I'm sure maybe you get on there and razz him a little bit about his.
You know where to find me. You know where to find me. Man.
They know where to get you exactly. So I'll let you two get back to it. I just want to pop on and say, hey, you're doing a great job.
Thanks for popping in,
I'll
champ.
Continue to enjoy the show. Have a good afternoon, guys.
Thank you. Good luck on your draft.
Bye.
Best FSGA best ball champion. Yeah, honestly, I'm glad he popped in because they wanted me to log in. I'm now officially logged in, ready to go for that. The moment we finish here, I'll be popping over doing that, and those results will be posted so you can check it all out. And make sure you're signed up for RT Sports, as John said. It's a great platform. I find the ADP is kind of in the middle between some of the other sites. you get an honest look at it. And they've got some contests over there that, they got $35 $25 best ball championship where you can win $25,000. They have a $300 high stakes one where you can win $500,000. And with those, $300, winner gets $500,000. There's not that many teams in that. And if you win your own league, just your own 12-team league, you win $1,600. So it's like, if you're good enough to win just your own league, you would get 1,600, and then you get entered into the postseason tournament where you can win $500,000. So if you think you're good at it, RT Sports is the place to check that out.
Yep, for sure. They've got some good stuff going on over there, but we're getting kind of up against it. And I do want to touch on this draft, the newest draft in the fantasy football draft guide over at Fantasy Alarm. Howard Bender's coming out with all the coaching systems for every division in football. And yesterday he put out the NFC East. So we touched on it yesterday, why coaching systems and schemes are so important. But the short answer is that it just helps you draft better. Knowing personnel and systems gives you the best chance to draft a player who's on the field and gets targeted. So I'm going to ask you a few rapid fire questions here, Coop, about these systems and schemes. Do you think the Washington Commanders can properly execute a West Coast offensive scheme with their current personnel and Sam Howell under center?
So I think they can. And the thing is, I would actually go as far as say they did a great job of bringing in Jacoby Brissett, because these two players are fairly similar in Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, where they are, when you look at them, their profiles on like Player Profile or one of those sites, Raz Score, you're not going to be impressed, right? Like Sam Howell didn't run at the combine, but he's not particularly fast. What he is very decisive when he runs, and he can make the most of space. Same with Jacoby Myers. So these guys are both capable of 250, 300, 350 rushing yards. They're also capable of punching it in the red area if they find a hole. I mean, we watched Sam Howell did it against your Cowboys last year, where he saw a path to the end zone and he didn't hesitate and he took it. So it's entirely possible that they can do their best to fill into a West Coast type role, but none of these guys are Patrick Mahomes. So we're going to get to see Eric Bieniemy for the first time, which people have been clamoring for, right? Everybody, his own coach, Andy Reid, all these people have been saying, why isn't he getting a shot? Well, now he's getting a shot, and we'll get to see what he can do. The good news is that he's going to be with two veteran, they have a lot of veteran coaches on that staff. Ron Rivera has been around for a long time. Defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio has been around since he were allowed to wear a suit on the sidelines. So, these guys, it's a pretty good staff. And I think that the offense will be interesting, but I personally just don't love Sam Howell. And I've made that pretty clear on Twitter. And every time I tweet about Sam Howell, people get very upset. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think, we're all worried about Sam Howell, but Patrick Mahomes' stat line last year with Bieniemy was a little bit misleading, because he was second in yards per attempt, but he was only 23rd in air yards per attempt because of the ability of the receivers to gain yards after the catch. And that West Coast style offense is kind of about the dink and dunk to set up the longer pass. So I think that if Sam Howell can embrace this dink and dunk system, that it may work kind of well with the skill set. And I foresee a lot of work for Antonio Gibson. I know that you said that they don't like him, but I think that the real victim of this change of style and quarterback may be Terry McLaurin, because I'm worried about them being able to set up the deep ball. So we'll just have to see how that works out. But the Eagles also changed coaches on both sides of the ball. Do you expect them to be as dominant as they were last year, or do you think that there's some kind of regression incoming?
So I actually, in these cases, and this is what I appreciate with Howard for doing the full write up, he doesn't just say, oh, yeah, this guy, because you look at the top part, it says, Brian Johnson, his first year coordinator, right? But this is his third year with the Eagles. They promoted from within. I like when Matt Nagy left and Eric Bieniemy came up, I didn't expect a big change in the offense because the offense works, right? Jonathan Gannon got signed away. It's not like they had to fire their OC and go a different direction. That's where you get the big, scary changes. Like when the Panthers had to fire Joe Brady, everything changed. And then when they fired Matt Rule, it changed again. Like that's where you get all the uncertainty and everything. If it's a situation where you lose the OC or DC because they're just so good, then usually you can have somebody within the organization to come in and at least replicate that if they're, used to it. Where you have trouble is when you bring in like Matt Patricia off the street, who's never coached offense before and try and have him call the plays. That's where you get the nightmare situation, right? So for me, with a situation like the Eagles, I'm not too worried about these coaches who have been there come in and say, "Oh, how did they used to do it? Oh yeah, I know. We'll be fine."
Yeah, I think there may be a little regression incoming just with Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown, but the real linchpin of this offense is going to be the health of DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. Part of that West Coast offensive style is using the pass to set up the run. And if the defense doesn't respect the run, it's going to be kind of hard to set up the pass. So, going to be interesting to see how that turns out. We've got time for one more quick hit. So we touched on this during the news segment, but with Dallas switching from a traditional West Coast offense to a timing system, does this offense struggle?
No, I think that I think they're going to be like the guys that we think are going to be good are going to be fine. Like I'm still drafting CD Lamb. I kind of like Brandon Cooks in this particular system, the Air Coryell. It's a just a hybrid version of the spread offense for those that don't know. It was founded by Don Coryell, who used to coach the Chargers. And the spread offense goes all the way back to the story. I know we only have a minute. I wish we had longer. But the spread offense, it's funny. It was invented by this guy in high school that had all these tiny like misfits as his team, like these tinier kids. And to beat the bigger teams, he invented this new offense where you just take all these little guys and spread them all out and have them run all over the place. They called them like the Mighty Might offense or whatever. That was the invention of the spread offense. As crazy as that sounds, because this team, despite being smaller than everybody else, found a way to make it work. So that's why, if you think about how this originated, guys like Brandon Cooks, that might not be huge, this plays to their strengths, the timing and the separation and spreading everybody out. So it will be interesting. I just worry that the coach doesn't want to throw. So if the coach doesn't want to throw the ball, the head ball coach, Mike McCarthy, then he's the one that makes decisions at the end of the day.
Well, I love hearing your thoughts on that as a Cowboys fan, but that's it for our show today. Make sure that you guys buy the draft guide, go over to fantasyalarm.com/draft guide, check out the coaching systems, the cheat sheet, or buy our all pro package. Use promo code Howard or Coop for 50% off your first 6 months and get a 7-day trial. Also, tune in to Tour Junkies previewing the Open Championship for golf betting and DFS at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Better Sports Network. And we will see you guys tomorrow.